You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast.
Şimdi Ahmet ikinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet
And welcome back, everybody. Episode 215 of the Black Eagles podcast. And I'm your host, Sinan. Live from New York City. Back again. As normal winter resumes. It was like absolutely frigid. Like even the floors of our house were cold for a few days. And just as football returns, kind of normal weather, normal winter. It's not warm, you know. It's not like we're not having fun over here outside. We're just above the freezing, you know, but at least we are above there. We were not. For a solid minute, for a good minute or two there. And supposedly, this week, we're going to get a little sampling of the spring here in New York City. So hopefully the weather metaphor extends as the season progresses. But, you know, it is what it is. Fun little weather metaphor for now. Just the usual. Anyhow, losing my mind, obviously. Let's talk some Beşiktaş. It's been a while. Took a little break there. Beşiktaş took a break. The national team, I thought perhaps the national side would be getting together. Was not the case. No idea what that was about, to be honest.
Operation is in effect as of right now.
A number of other national sides got together. Canada, for example, looking close to the World Cup for the first time, at least as far back as I'm aware of. But yeah, our boys Atiba Hutchinson and Kyle Aaron returning actually from their two qualifiers just in time for our match, so they could theoretically feature, though they wouldn't in the starting lineup. I guess let's talk before we even get into that good stuff. We've got some news, and it's some really good news. I'm not going to do details, like financial details and stuff. I'm going to leave that to Kaan. And that's right, I said it, Kaan. We've got a hashtag Kaan's Corner. He's back to talk GEDSON FERNANDES, who was a highly sought after player who I didn't think was realistic for us to get. So I didn't even mention any of the rumors about it. I thought we were just sort of playing around with Galatasaray's, you know, pulling on their heartstrings a little bit. But sure enough, this just in, we got him. I mean, basically it looks like we got him for $6 million with a big percentage of, you know, profit of the sale going back to Benfica if we were to sell him at some future date. So I said I wasn't going to give you financials, and then I did it. Kind of have more detailed financials, perhaps, but yeah, I mean it's an affordable deal, relatively speaking. I mean it's a bit steep for Beşiktaş on the one hand, but he's a proven Super League player on the other hand. Yeah, not particularly old, mind you, either. It's probably worth noting that the kid is only 23. So it's helping build the core, right? This core of younger guys. Montero, right, as he rounds into form and becomes a legitimately good Super League defender. He becomes part of that core, right? We've got Ridvan, Ersin. They could be on their way out. Speaking of news, I suppose I'll mention Olympique Lyon are supposedly on the pursuit of Ridvan. In pursuit of Ridvan. A couple of other French sides potentially also coming in for him, but the only sort of the one that's been recurrent now, and there's some numbers even tossed out was Lyon. Something like 7 or 8 mil. Well, I mean, we'll see how that goes. If we have to sell him, it's not the end of the world. We do have Umut Meraş, who will return eventually. I guess theoretically Fabrice Nsakla could return as a backup beyond that, which is the role we could have used him in to begin with. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if we let him go and maybe look for a Turkish backup for Umut Meraş, just to free up our foreign slots. A valuable asset these days, a foreign slot. But so yeah, GEDSON FERNANDES. And in the interim, well, since we don't have any foreign slots to give, we have loaned him out to Rizespor. And so one sort of fascinating note, right? He just arrived midweek, so obviously they weren't going to give him the start. Probably were not really thinking to play him, but perhaps he asked to come in. He steps into a match where his side is losing 2-0. They go down 3-0, like, just as he comes in, essentially. Balotelli scores a brace. But just 10 minutes later, he would assist Yusuf Sadi, and they would, make something of the match, I guess. I mean, sort of. I mean, being down 1-3 on the road in the 81st minute, it's not making much of it, but, still good to see him coming in, contributing fairly quickly right out of the gates. And in good form, we're ready to play, right? He hadn't played in a while, so yeah, I mean, all good signs, and it's great that he'll be playing for us next season, something for us to look forward to, obviously. And yeah, I mean, all around, just great stuff, right? So, now, quickly, let's talk a little bit about Antalyaspor, who, coming into the match, were in the final relegation slot. And I don't mean in last place. I mean the one right below the line. So they were in the relegation zone. I would say are undeservedly right. They're not a bad side when you look at the talent they have. They got off to a really terrible start. They brought in Nuri Şahin, who kind of brought a little energy initially, but they've lost some steam. I guess first let's talk about their last 5 matches, or their previous 5 before ours. We go back to the Super Cup. The good old days. January 5th, they drew us 1-1 and then lost in penalties. We go before that match, just for the sake of getting more information, they had beaten GEDSON in the Cup 2-1. So they followed that up by taking us to penalties, essentially, and then losing on penalties. But that would be when things took a turn for the worse. A loss on the road against Göztepe, 4-0. Ouch. Bringing it home where they draw against Fener, 1-1. Going down in the 72nd, coming back in the 81st to get a point of it. So not bad, right? Still, it's like, okay, maybe they've righted the ship, right? But then they go to Rize, who is a relegation candidate alongside them, and lose 2-1. Finish Poyan Palo scoring on a penalty, and Gökhan Gönül. So a few familiar names. Haji Wright scoring for them. Poyan Palo cooked us, if folks recall, and of course we all know who Gökhan Gönül is. And so then they followed it up, coming home again against Gaziantep, and drawing 0-0. I don't know much about the match except to say that the man of the match was rated as Ruud Boffin, Antalya's keeper. So probably not good news for them if we're going to be realistic. Worth noting in our head-to-head, which I like to do, my little app here goes back 26 matches with Antalya. Just fairly random, I suppose, but in those 26 matches, Beşiktaş has 16 wins, 5 draws, and Antalya has only won 5 matches. So 62% of those matches have been Beşiktaş victories. So a pretty good record against this side, you would say. And yet, right? Like, not ideal results as far as them taking us to penalties in the Super Cup match. A game where, like, Under Karaveli's supposed, like, career was on the line, right? They were saying if he came back with those 2 victories, he would get the job, which ended up being true. He did, although it was, again, right, not easy. Penalties, but okay. We're rolling with it. Now let's talk a little bit about everyone's favorite part of the episode. Probably not really accurate at all. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about lineups, right? I mean, this is actually an interesting part of the episode because in this episode we have a change up. Caravelli went for the 3-4. They're calling it a 3-4-2-1. You know, I don't know exactly how you lined it up. I think it might have been more of a 3-4-1-2. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. Let's just lay the players out and see what we think. So Ersin was in the goal, obviously. On the back line, Montero, Vida, and Necip, which is interesting. As wingbacks, of course, Valentin Hozier and Ridvan Yilmaz. Now we had Pjanic and Can Bozdoğan as the sort of back of our midfield. And then up ahead of them, Emirhan İlkan and Alex Teixeira. Now, so you could debate, it could be debatable that Alex Teixeira was more aligned with Michy Batshuayi. Some folks thought he might be like a second striker up there. So again, more of a 3-4-1-2. My app listed it as a 3-4-2-1 with both of them supporting Batshuayi, which leaves a big hole behind the striker, between like Pjanic and Can Bozdoğan and the striker Michy Batshuayi, if they're flaring out wide. Although in theory, I suppose one of them could go centrally and the other one could flare out wide when it's necessary or whatever it is. So, again, I'm not sure exactly how these things got laid out, but I think you like to see. I like to see, him tinkering, looking for something new, something that'll work. Right? We've been coming out flat. I think everyone's been complaining about it. So, say what you will about Önder Caravelli and some of his decisions, but he's tinkering. He's like, people had been calling for the 3-man back line for a long time. He went for it. And perhaps more importantly, and this is where I'll really give him credit, he's playing Ersin Destanoğlu, Francisco Montero, Javi, if you will, Can Bozdoğan, Ridvan Yilmaz, Emirhan İlkan, right? That's 5 dudes that are quite young. I mean, Montero's 23, but like that's the sort of ceiling of this new core of dudes that we're kind of building around at this point. We could theoretically be building around. Now, we'll talk about whether or not that's actually possible at the end of this episode, or at least the end of the match, right? So I don't spoil anything, but certainly a few of these guys we can consider building around. And Montero is a guy who's had a number of really good games this season. I think he's earned a lot of fans, perhaps. So we'll see about that, I guess. But as for our opponents, Antalyaspor, Ruud Boffin in goal, a man who needs no introduction, 34-year-old Belgian. Veysel Sarri, 33-year-old Turk, next to Naldo, 33-year-old Brazilian, on their back line. Bunyamin Balci, 21-year-old Turk, opposite 33-year-old Guday Vural on their flanks. So they played a kind of classic 4-3-2-1, or 4-2-3-1, however you line it up. But so Fernando, a 29-year-old Brazilian central defensive midfielder, next to Andrea Poli, 32-year-old Italian. Ahead of them, Freddy, 31-year-old Angolan, and Alassane Ndao, 25-year-old Senegalese right midfielder who is new to their squad. Doğukan Sinik, 23-year-old Turk, on the left side. And then up top, Luis Adriano, 34-year-old Brazilian, also new to their squad. So they had a lot of new additions. Nuri Şahin going with more of a kind of traditional tactic, if you will. But so yeah, let's dive in, I suppose. Having a sip, sorry. So, first of all, it's important to note that the fans were fantastic. They came out in great numbers, which I hadn't seen in a long time. Alen Markarian was there, which you also like to see, I suppose. And yeah, just good volume, good fans in general. Very critical of the coach. You know, I'm certainly not a Under Karavelli defender, though. Again, right, like, he mixed up the tactic. He gave folks the tactic they've been wanting with the 3 guys back. And on top of that, 5 young guys, right? Like, so, I don't know, man. He's kind of checking off a lot of boxes, while obviously, you know, we're not performing to the extent that we'd like to be either. So, there's criticism, no doubt, that needs to be sort of tossed his way. But, how much of it? Well, I'll leave that to you to be the judge, listener. Let's see. Where do we begin? I guess we'll talk about the 8th minute, where Batshuayi has a shot deflected, and it almost goes in. It forces a diving fingertip save from Beaufin. And on the ensuing corner kick, it finds Montero's head, and he pings it off the crossbar, and we almost go ahead twice in the first 8 minutes. Of course, that just never pans out. We never get that early goal somehow. We come close almost every match, but never quite get it. 22nd minute, Domagoj Vida goes down. We don't know why. Luis Adriano, you know, maybe gives him a bit of an elbow to the head. It's not called anyway, so this could have been disastrous. Luis Adriano then dribbled it all the way up, stops to pass it into Ndao. Javi Montero cuts it out really well, getting back the only man, the last man back, saves the day, kind of cuts it out, and Adriano kind of gets it again, and it finds its way to someone who takes a shot. I'm not sure exactly who. Ersin makes a pretty solid save, and so, you know, still 0-0. Shots from distance, you know, it's high. I'm not 100% certain it was going in. I think it was, and he gets up, diving, punches it. So yeah, you know, there's some action here for sure. It's worth noting that Ersin would do a really good job throughout this first half of coming out and cutting out attacks. And it's also worth noting that Domagoj Vida was terrible, you know, as far as the 3 men back concept goes. You know, with those wing backs, there's always the potential for them to be going forward and pushing forward. And so when Domagoj Vida takes hits the snooze button or whatever it was he's doing, and just decides to stay up, he put us in a lot of trouble very often. With that said, Zidvan and Rosier also struggled with the concept of, you know, going forward, but then making sure to come back, especially if they notice Domagoj Vida hitting the snooze button there. Someone has to come back and give some support. So there was some miscommunication. They struggled with this tactic with the 3 men back. Not what folks who've been clamoring for that would have hoped for. Obviously, you can argue about whether or not this was like the ideal lineup for that tactic, but I don't think anyone's complaining too much about the fact that he gave a bunch of like kids an opportunity. You know, a lot of us were hoping John Bozdoğan would come in and make an impact. The kid is would be a very cheap transfer, who could be, you know, flipped for big bucks, right? I mean, he looked pretty good for a minute or two there, but he's also come out flat. He was flat in this match. I'm not gonna lie. Now that we're talking about it, we can dig in a little. Next big moment would be in the 34th minute. A free kick from Pjanic would find the head of Montero. So the free kick is from deep on the right side to the sort of left side of the penalty box, where Montero heads it back across the mouth of the goal. Looks perfect. Finds Domagoj Vida's head. Somehow it misses. Turns out the somehow is that it pings off of the hand of a defender in their camp. I don't understand this handball thing. You know, it's the type of scenario where we've gotten that called against us probably 3 or 4 times in much less precarious, you know, kind of quote-unquote unnatural or versus natural hand position scenarios. So I don't know how we always get screwed on this, and somehow whenever it's 50-50 the other way. And I don't even know if this was 50-50. This one seemed like 70-30. It should have been a handball. So anyway, they look at it for a little while. Don't call it a penalty. I'm mystified. I'm gonna keep it 100 here. That one looked like a very clear handball. But anyway, that would be it as far as the half goes. As far as like major opportunities, major sort of highlights. Again, Ersin flying out and doing a good job of clearing the ball a number of times. Like timing it really well too. You know, that's been something he's struggled with. So marked improvement, and that's literally the most you could hope for from a young player. So all the things where he's shown to be error prone in previous scenarios, he's, you know, showing the ability to improve on, which is again ideal. Ersin Testanova, legitimate dude. Anyway, halftime. So we come out of the half. I don't believe that I've missed any major sort of match facts, though I suppose it's probably worth noting that Naldo got a yellow card in the 34th minute of the match. Out of the break, no subs. Ndao would come charging into our half, and Ersin cut it out, diving out, making a big save, saving us yet again. This one notable because he actually made it as far as the box, basically, you know, inches away from getting a shot in. Luis Adriano would get a yellow card a minute later. 53rd minute, Luis Adriano would score, though, because he was like a yard and a half or 2 yards offside. So no one's shocked in this scenario that it's called offside. 63rd minute, some subs. And, you know, again, good timing for subs, I think. Pretty good subs, for that matter. Rashid Ghazal on for Emirhan İlkan. Kyle Larin on for Can Bozdoğan. Now, I thought this was us switching to like the 4-4-2 or 4, you know, whatever it is that we typically play with, you know. With Ghazal and Larin on the wings, right? Can and Emirhan out, so Alex Teixeira's in. So, you know, I don't know, maybe the 4-2-3-1, whatever that typical thing is where we have Alex in up front, whatever. But good subs, right? Like, nobody's complaining about seeing Rashid Ghazal come on and Kyle Larin. You know, he's theoretically, there's not really another option, for 100% honest. He's scored a bunch, right? Historically, I mean, we've all, I think, been feeling that he's having a bit of an off year relative to last season, although I think we also all felt that last season was like way more than we should have reasonably expected from him. So perhaps this is but so, fine, whatever. Right after Rashid Ghazal comes on, he gets a yellow card. Weird. 68th minute, Husam Gacha comes on for Luis Adriano. Gökdeniz Bayraktar, a name that should scare us. He's troubled us in the past. Comes on for Doğukan Sinek. Kyle Larin gets the ball on a perfectly weighted long ball. I think it was from Pjanic. Drops into his pad. And then he tries... I think he tried to lob the keeper, but from like the outside of the penalty box, the keeper wasn't rushing out, so it was a bad decision at the very least, if that's what he was trying to do. Maybe he just skied it. It was bad. It was just a terrible shot, which, is possible. But so that would be what looked like a big opportunity, gone right after he comes into the match. Might have been Ghazal who put him on. What's next? Oh yeah, Joseph de Souza would come onto the pitch for Alex Teixeira. So we're going a little defensive here because they to be fair, they're still attacking. That's honestly why I thought we didn't switch away from the 3-back scenario until the Ghazal and Larin sub, because similarly Ersin was coming out and like cutting out big opportunities for them and making, you know, good defensive sweeper keeper moves for us. So I didn't think that the change had been made, but my Scottish twins, I'll trust them. They said that we actually switched to that tactic at the half. Excuse me. And so, before even putting in the proper personnel, we're trying to revert. And we had Necip in the back of the midfield then, rather, in the back forward line again. So, if that's true, a little bit conservative, perhaps, tactically, but you could make the argument that what we saw in the first half was not quite working on the back end, especially. We looked uncomfortable. But again, I don't know that we settled particularly well in the second half until about this point where it was about the 75th minute we just took over the match. Haji Wright comes on for Alassane Ndao. Joseph de Souza gets a yellow card on the 78th minute, right after Batshuayi does a really nice job of bringing the ball down and laying it on for Ozan, who sends in a shot that's blocked by Naldo. Pretty well blocked, but I think a lot of us might have been hoping Ozan would do more with it. It was really expertly laid on by Michy Batshuayi. I can't underscore that enough. And another opportunity gone by the wayside. Getting a little late in the day. 78th minute, yellow card for Joseph, as I said. 79th minute, Ridvan sends in what looks like a fantastic cross to Batshuayi. Batshuayi puts on what looks like the perfect header, and he puts it directly into the ground. It bounces up, almost just out of the reach of Ruud Boffin, and he has to, again, fingertips, punches it out into the path of Kyle Larin, who, I don't know if he could have done better with this. If he could have, he should have. So he does a bicycle kick. It actually gets past Ruud Boffin, would be a goal, but Naldo is well positioned, and it's actually pretty easy for him to sort of chest down and make a bit of a clearance with. That was Kaan, by the way, that sound on my phone. So I think we're going to get a soundbite from him after all. Good news. Ridvan does a great job of setting that one up. Kyle Larin almost putting it away. Certainly Michy Batshuayi also almost put it away too. And so, things are getting nervy. 82nd minute, again, perfect cross by Ridvan. And this time, Kyle Larin just doesn't get onto it. I don't know. Maybe it's the height. It's kind of in the middle where he can't quite put his head onto it without getting maybe crunched by the keeper. And his foot, I think he anticipates the keeper getting there first, but he doesn't. So he should have gotten something on the cross. It was a really well placed cross. Doesn't. 82nd minute here, right? Things aren't looking good. Valentin Ozier had just gotten a yellow. Guven Yalchin enters the match now for Michy Batshuayi. Obviously, just looking for some energy, right? A different look. 85th minute, Hakan Uzmert comes on for Andrea Poli. Bahadir Öztürk comes on for Freddy. Veysel Sadi gets a yellow card right after Rashid Ghazal does a really nice job. I actually didn't even notice this in the game. I don't know if I was having a coffee at this point or something, but Rashid Ghazal does a really good job of sort of shimmying around along the wing, cutting back, sending in a really hard cross for Pjanic, who just gets a one-touch. It just pings off the bar out of bounds. And it was one of those, it was a perfect synopsis of our day. 1 inch to the left, and we probably win that match there late. It just wasn't to be. Instead, it pings off the post, goes the other way, and we come out of this one with a draw. And that's it. So I said Veysel Sadi got a yellow, so did Guday Vural. Guven Yalchin got one. Both in the same exchange. Ruud Boffin gets one for time wasting. 2 minutes into extra time. Miralem Pjanic gets a yellow card in the 6th minute of extra time, and then another one in the 7th minute for arguing. You assume he must have cursed out the ref or something because he was sort of walking away. I don't know exactly what happened, but it is what it is. He's not going to be available in the next match, which could be worse. It's a cup match, right? And as I recall, it crosses over into that realm. One could argue the cup is perhaps the most important thing for us now because it's a ticket to the Europa League. with that said, I mean, I think we should be able to beat Göztepe at home regardless. I'll be 100% honest. And that's going to be our next match, by the way. We're playing Göztepe at home in the Turkish Cup. So yeah, round of 16, obviously a pretty big match, but on the other hand, Pjanic can rest up for our next Super League match, which is, you know, again, not the end of the world. It's a pretty big one. We're playing Adana Demirspor, who is right above us in the table. We'll talk about those standings in a minute. First, let's wrap up information on that last match by going into the stats a bit. Now, Beşiktaş had 58% of the ball to their 42. 17 shots, 6 big chances. They had 5 shots, 0 big chances. The XG, by the way, was like 2 point something to 0.2. So it rounded up to like 3-0. It should have been. So yeah, that's news. We missed all 6 of our big chances. They missed all 0 of their 0 big chances. We had 473 accurate passes at an 84% clip. They had 317 at a 74% clip. Not bad, but bad enough that we should have probably beaten them. We committed 18 fouls. They committed 13. They were offsides twice for 0. So Michy Batshuayi perhaps not aggressive enough in making runs forward. But he did a pretty good job of laying the table for others. 11 corners to their 2, so we were more aggressive in that sense. 6 shots off target. They had 2 shots off target. We had 4 shots on target. They had 2 shots on target. We had 7 shots blocked by defenders. So, gross. Not ideal. Let's talk about players, and I'll quickly just go through the guys from the best down, all just above 7.0, right? So like the good players from this match. And the highest rated player is definitely my man of the match, Javi Francisco Montero. Second best player is probably the guy who could have gotten it, Ersin Destanoğlu, the only other guy, I think, for that matter. From there, it's Fernando, their central defensive midfielder. Then it's Domagoj Vida, who they don't account for his mental lapses throughout the match. Then it's Ruud Boffin, who made quite a few saves. Then it's Ridvan Yilmaz, who had a great number of pinpoint crosses that one of them at least should have been put away. Then it's Guray Vural, Necip Uysal, which is interesting. He would of course be taken out. Veysel Sarri would be next. Naldo, Miralem Pjanic, who, he had some decent plays on the ball. That last shot, if it would gone in, would have been nice. Then Joseph de Souza, who played fairly limited minutes, so that's interesting. Then Valentin Rosier. Rosier and Ridvan started out poor when they were the wing-back roles, but they got it together for sure by the end of the match. Then Bunyamin Balji right above the line, and Andrea Poli at the very line at the 7, right beneath Freddy with a 6.99. Michy Batshuayi not quite making the cut. Yeah, certainly not his finest match. Let's talk about Javi Montero's stats, because, man of the match, and let's talk about perhaps why. First of all, 79 for 91 with his passes at an 87% rate. 1 key pass, in fact. Don't recall that, but so interesting. He missed a big chance. It was his header, which hit the woodwork. We all recall that. He had 109 touches. Wow, omnipresent. Quite a big match for him in that regard. Accurate long balls, 4 of 7. Not bad, right? 8 recoveries, so he came back and did well. Especially, I think, when we're playing 3-back. He was the one dude who seemed committed to the concept of being back when we needed him to be. He had 4 clearances, he had a block. All around it's a fantastic game. I mentioned he had the key stop where he was the one man who got back and cut out their only real dangerous play of the first half. So good stuff from him. Fantastic stuff from him even. Ersin, 2 saves, both of his shots faced. And that doesn't speak to where he was really fantastic, and that was as a defender. We had the sirens coming in just in time to ring in Hashtag Kaan's Corner. The fire department is ringing him in.
Hey everyone, Kaan here. It's been a long time. A couple things to talk about. Of course, just the Antalya game. Bit of the story of our season. Didn't play horrible, I thought. I know Sinan didn't like the way we played, but first half, I thought Antalya looked really good. With their new players, Fernando and Luis Adriano, and a couple of others, a couple of other interesting signings that immediately made their presence felt. And for a while there, I really felt like they were giving us football lessons. But I think it changed in the last 20 minutes, especially when we made subs, when we took off Can, when we took off Necip, when we took off Emirhan, when Rashid Ghazal came on, of course, Oğuzhan came on. A couple of more experienced players than Can and Emirhan, of course, and then Necip subbed off for Joseph. Of course, big difference in quality there too. And in the last 20 minutes, I think we should have won. There were two penalty situations. The first one, I wasn't entirely sure about. I did definitely think that he made a conscientious movement for the ball. But at first glance, I thought it hit his arm, his elbow, sorry. His shoulder. I actually initially thought that he went up with his shoulder to dab at it. But then in the replay, from a certain angle, it looked like it was his elbow. I'm going to give the VAR officials the benefit of the doubt here because they did check. And if they decided not to call the referee over, then either it didn't hit his elbow or there was a foul in their interpretation before. But the second one, which was right at the end, just after Batshuayi got subbed off and Güven Yalçın came on, we had a corner. And Güven basically heads it in the goal. And it hits an Antalyaspor player's arm. And that literally prevents the goal. Whether that's conscientious or not, that is always a penalty according to the rules, even if it's not on purpose. It doesn't matter anymore according to the new rules. If you block a shot that's going toward goal, it's an automatic penalty and a yellow card. Now, the difference here in the discrepancy to the referee is that if he thinks it's a deliberate handball, then he has to give a red card. But if he thinks it's not a deliberate handball, then it's just a yellow, but it's always a penalty. I don't get why there wasn't a VAR check here. It didn't look like VAR was talking to the ref. This should have always been a penalty. It's completely unacceptable that this wasn't given. But yeah, like I said, it's the story of our season. They don't like giving us anything this season. We aren't good enough to force our will on our opponents. And then these types of situations become very decisive. In any season, even if you're good, these types of situations are going to be decisive, but more so in a season where you're not actually that good. We're 20-something points behind Trabzonspor. We've had so many of these dubious situations this season. If we were 5, 6, 7 points behind, this could really make the difference between challenging for the title or not. But quite frankly, if you start adding it all up, I think we easily get to 15 plus points that we just blatantly got robbed of this season. There's so many clear-cut penalties this season that just have been ignored, completely ignored. We keep getting these similar positions called against us, but when it's quote unquote in favor of us, it seems like VAR is always switched off or something. And then of course, to adding insult to injury, the ref is an absolute complete dickhead. He gives Pjanic 2 yellow cards in the span of a minute or two, or 1 minute or 2 minutes, I don't know. Pjanic very clearly frustrated with the officiating, as he has been for a long time. I mean, you can just tell it in his body language. I know there's people kidding, like who make jokes on Twitter saying, "Oh, he just did this to get out of the next match," and blah and blah. As you always have these morons saying those things. But I mean, it's been all over his body language for months now that he is absolutely appalled by the level of officiating in Turkey, and I can't blame him. It's never been good. It's always been terrible, malicious even. But this season, it's come to such a point where I don't even get why they're doing it anymore. Like we are so far behind. There's no chance for us to win the title at this point. Like why? Like what does it matter if we win this game if you give a righteous penalty? What does the difference make? Why are you still fucking with us every week? Every week. I don't know. We've had a couple of penalties recently, which surprises me. But like, I mean, we've been getting penalties, more penalties than we normally do in the last couple of weeks. I think we got like 2 in the last, I don't know, 6 games or something, which is extremely high level, high amount for us. Just historically, if you just look at the data over the past 20 years, the amounts of penalties that we get versus Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, and even Trabzonspor, we're below all of them in the amount of penalties. I don't have the exact data, but I looked at it a few years ago, and it was the contrast was so stark, it was ridiculous. So yeah, anyway, it doesn't really change anything. Let's get to some more exciting news. Beşiktaş just made their first and only, I think, winter transfer. Although this transfer won't really go into effect until the summer. GEDSON Fernandes, 22-year-old Portuguese central midfielder. Of course, we saw him in action last season for Galatasaray, and we were quite comfortably ahead at the winter break last season. And GEDSON, together with, of course, the wash list of injuries we had in the second half of the season, was a big reason for Galatasaray creeping up on us and almost snatching it from us in the end. He was a breath of fresh air and a missing component for Galatasaray's midfield last season. Their fans are super high on him, of course, so they are absolutely gutted. Beşiktaş took note of his strong performance last season. And of course, put him on their wish list, on their transfer list. Now they managed to strike a deal with Benfica for 6 million, which is the highest transfer fee we've paid since Adem Ljajic. And of course, we all know that didn't exactly pan out the way we wanted. But on top of that 6 million transfer fee, we're also giving away basically 50% of his rights. So if we sell him in the future, we will be paying 50% of that, or we will be giving away 50% of that back to Benfica. At first glance, that doesn't look like a great deal. But, I mean, I think if you realistically want to get a player like GEDSON Fernandes, a player rated as highly as he is and a player that is as young as he is, then getting a player like that for 6 million is a steal, even though that is a lot of money for us. And there's no guarantee for success. But it's just getting a player like that under 10-15 million is very difficult in today's market. I mean, we tried to sign him in the summer, and Benfica insisted on 15 million, and now they decreased their price, which made me suspicious, because I remember very well GEDSON a couple of years ago was very highly touted, very highly rated. Actually, a friend of mine sent me a headline of a newspaper in Portugal. I think I'd have to check. I think it was Abola, from a couple of years ago, where basically it said that, I think it was probably roughly when Benfica either signed a deal with him or something, and it said his release clause is like 150 million, which of course is great for our 150 million then memes. I actually have to check, and in fact, I'll send that front page to Sinan so he can somehow include it in the artwork of the episode. But anyway, so I was actually kind of suspicious because, yeah, of course, I watched him at Galatasaray last season, but I didn't watch all of Galatasaray's games. Obviously, I was hyper focused on Beşiktaş and very nervous, as we all were, throughout the second half of the season. So I watched him play, and when I watched him play on occasion, he always looked really good. Of course, he was the main reason that we lost the game against Galatasaray. He was the man with that subliminal, over the top uh, pass through Ryan Babel, who opened the scoring against us in the Turk Telecom Arena match. That match that ultimately ended up making it very, very tight. Good thing that they didn't score one more goal, or we would have been effed. Anyway, GEDSON impressed there, and GEDSON impressed throughout the second half of the season for them. He just looked like a quality player. What will he be exactly? Like, again, I can't really say because I haven't watched him enough to make a proper assessment whether he is the long-awaited, long-term Atiba Hutchinson replacement, or if he's more like a replacement for Pjanic or, Oğuzhan, really. We'll have to see. I mean, he's definitely a creative player and a more forward thinking in terms of true passes and all that. The main thing is, that's the type of stuff you notice when you watch a player at first glance. The thing you don't notice when you aren't paying close attention, or at least I don't, unless I'm paying very close attention, is what's their defensive work rate like, what's their contribution to the team off the ball, all that kind of stuff. So that's stuff I will still want to see in terms of where he will slot in, what kind of role he will be fulfilling. Is he the Atiba Hutchinson replacement? I mean, we need to keep in mind Atiba, yeah, he played as a six for us, but really he was always kind of the distributor, not necessarily the distributor, but like the connective tissue between the defense and offense. And he did play, like, people early on in his early years always said, Atiba just plays a lot of lateral passes, and that is why he has such a high passing percentage. But that isn't true. Atiba actually plays a lot of forward passes, is very involved in attacks and in building up attacks. And that's also, I think, why in the last couple of years his productivity has shot up a lot, because he started off as a way more defensive player for us. I mean, hell, he played a lot of games for us at right back in his first season, but and then he kind of got slotted into that central defensive midfielder role together with Vili. And then once Güneş took over, he kind of took that role upon himself. He became the number 6, and Oğuzhan became the 8 next to him, of course, and then Sosa the floating 10. But he has played many different roles over the years. So the question is, if you want to say, okay, GEDSON, is he a long-term Atiba replacement? Yeah, he can be, but that all depends on what role of Atiba you see, because Atiba in the last couple of years has been more an 8 than a 6, whereas in let's say the last 3-4 years, I would say he's been more an 8 than a 6, whereas in the years before that he was definitely more the 6. So it kind of depends in what role he will be replacing Atiba. But I do think he is ultimately seen as the successor to Atiba Hutchinson. Although, of course, that does not mean for me that Atiba needs to hang up his boots, because, I want to see the legend complete a 10th season at Beşiktaş. But that's all besides the point. Now, the thing where I had my doubts, my hesitation is, look, this guy was so highly rated. He was named, when Jose Mourinho was at Tottenham, they were naming GEDSON as one of his transfer targets, and he has been one of those players that has been floated around in, joining Premier League teams and all that. But his career has declined in recent years. For some reason, Benfica have been unwilling to use him, and I thought that was very suspicious and concerning, because why would such a supposedly hyper talented player that potentially has a very high future sale fee, why would he? Why would they be willing? Why would they be so desperate to offload him now? So yeah, that's something that concerned me a lot, and I talked to someone about that, to a friend of mine from a journalist from Ojogo, and she told me that well, actually, the reason that Benfica are so desperate to offload him is because there's an issue with his agent. And first thing I thought, oh, okay, so he has a difficult agent. That's great. But no, turns out that that Benfica and this agent were kind of doing some shady business. And I've heard this kind of stuff happens more often than you think. There's a story on De Vrij from when he was at Lazio. Now he's at Inter, of course. There's a very nasty story about him and how his agent basically scammed him. So basically what happened there, and also here with GEDSON, is the agent represented GEDSON, but also represented Benfica without the player knowing. And that basically means that this agent pockets a lot of money, basically steals money from the player in order to make sure that he signs for a specific team. So what does that mean? He shields other offers from the player, for example. Like, let's say that Porto are also interested in GEDSON. Like, he either won't bring the offer to the player, or he'll misrepresent the offer just to make sure that he can stall the player at the club that he wants, because he gets a bigger cut from that club. So obviously, after GEDSON found out about this, he broke with this agent. He fired him. But obviously, Benfica have to act like they don't know what the hell is going on, because if they admit to this, then they are liable. But yeah, so anyway, that's basically where the break happened between the club and the player there. And I was very concerned that GEDSON was just a troublemaker, or maybe a difficult Portuguese player, like we've seen so many in the past, like Manuel Fernandes and Ricardo Quaresma, of course. But actually, my friend told me that he's a really nice guy, and with his head on a good head on his shoulders. So let's hope he works out, and that he can leave this nasty little bit of history behind him, and that he can flourish in the coming years. He's signed a 4+ 1 year deal, so we can potentially enjoy him for many years to come. And yeah, I don't have much more to say about it, because I'm not an expert on the player, and we'll have to wait and see how he performs for us. He was good at Galatasaray last season for 6 months. Let's hope he's good for us for the coming 5 years.
So yes, excellent stuff from Kaan there. Sorry, I kind of sprung that out on you by surprise. It was good timing. Let the FDNY bring him in. But so yeah, man of the match, Javi Montero, by the way, to recap. But yeah, great stuff from Kaan. It's hard for me to really disagree with much of what he has to say. But I don't disagree with him about anything regarding GEDSON, and it's great news. Some of the low-key scouting work that he's done, as far as like why he wasn't playing, right? We don't have to worry. It's not that he's not a good player or not highly valued. It's politics. But so great to hear from Kaan, of course. Always great to have a hashtag Kaan's Corner on air. With that said, I think it's time to bring us out. Now, quickly, I should probably do the standings. Worth mentioning, Antalyaspor has stayed in the relegation zone despite getting a point. GEDSON still is at 26 points, 1 point ahead of them. Rize 22 points, 3 points behind them. Then Antalya on 21, and Yeni Malatya at 16 at the bottom. Right above GEDSON would be Göztepe, which is worth noting because that's who we're going to be playing next, albeit for the Turkish Cup round of 16 match. So they'll be jazzed for that one, no doubt. And right above them, level on 27 points, Kasim Pasha. And then right above them, Kasim Pasha, by the way, who just lost to Trabzon 1-0. Supposedly some controversy I didn't watch, to be honest. But Galatasaray drew Alanya 1-1. So they also now remain just 3 points above Antalyaspor and the relegation zone. Not far above them, in 7th place, is Beşiktaş with 37 points. We're only 1 point above Hatay, 2 points above Gaziantep, and they actually have a game in hand, so they could theoretically pass us, and we'd be in 8th, which would be somewhat tragic. And Level on points with us, but with a goal differential advantage is Fener. They also have 37 points. Başakşehir also has 37, though they have a game in hand. The Konya match, right? That was postponed after the passing of Ahmet Çalık. But anyway, moving on. Above that 37-point group, trio, if you will, that we're in, is fourth place, Antalyaspor. They have 39 points. Then third place, Adana Demirspor, who I kind of alluded to earlier, had a big 1-3 victory. Mario Balotelli on the road there, or 3-1, I guess they were at home. So yeah, Adana Demir still turning heads in third place now. Up above them is Konyaspor with 48 points, game in hand. All right, still have that game in hand. They beat GEDSON last on February 4th, so they're keeping pace. Just 9 points back on Trabzonspor, and again it could be 6 with that game in hand against Başakşehir. And if that's true, then they'd have 51 points rather, and they'd be just 6 points behind Trabzon on 57. So yeah, Trabzon is certainly still running away with this thing. 17 points ahead of third place. Adana Demirspor 20 points ahead of Başakşehir, Fenerbahçe, and Beşiktaş. So, yikes, right? We're not catching them, but who knows who we might catch. Ideally, maybe even third place, but, lock up that Conference League. Second place, not entirely out of the realm of possibility. We are only 11 points back, but that could be 14. Remember that Konya has that game in hand. If that were to be true, I think we could pretty much assume that we're not really in competition for second place. So, whatever. Conference League or bust. But again, right, a strong showing in the Turkish Cup, and we could be in the Europa League, and that would be ideal regardless. So let's hope for that. And that leads to our upcoming match against Göztepe. Huge match, right? Now, head-to-head, in our last 9 appearances, that's all my app has, because Göztepe was out of the Super League for quite a while. Beşiktaş has won 7 of them. Göztepe has only won 2 of them. No draws. This is going to result in 3 points one way or another. But of course, this is the round of 16 in the Turkish Cup, so that's definitely true regardless. Even if it did end in a draw, then it would go to extra time and penalties. But yeah, 7 wins. 78% of all of our matches against Göztepe has resulted in a Beşiktaş win. So a great track record for us. Folks will recall a pretty important victory against them on May 15th, 2021. A Rashid Ghazal penalty sealing that victory for us and sealing a title. So let's hope for more good news against Göztepe in do or die huge matches. Certainly, again, the track record is there for us. And let's hope we can keep that run going. Like I said, as far as Göztepe goes, not a great season for them. They're in 15th place, right? Just 2 spots above the relegation zone, just 2 points above Antalyaspor. They have 27, Antalya has 25. Right, just 1 point behind Galatasaray. On the other hand, that's a silver lining, right? They probably never thought they'd be only a point behind Galatasaray 24 matches into the season. Although, they also didn't think that would be where they would be, so whatever. Anyway, that's all I gotta say for this match. Follow us on Twitter at Eagles_podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Black Eagles Podcast, one word. Follow Kaan, our hashtag Kaan's Corner star, if you will, at Razerian, RAZZERIAN. Follow myself at Sir_Right_a_lot. And of course, we will be back. Stay tuned. Post Göztepe. And needless to say, let's go Beşiktaş! Woo! Yeah! Let's do it. Lots of seasons still to be played. 14 matches.
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.